I would like to welcome you all to the launch of the much anticipated book, Good Girl, Bad Period, Breaking the Silence on Misogyny and Gaslighting Through the Lens of Endometriosis by Silvia Young, director and founder of FemTruth and FemTruth Youth. My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I'm the creator and host of the Invisible Iconic podcast. I'm very, very grateful to be here with you all today. This event is being recorded, and we do have our chat being monitored as well by Anna Stevenson, and she's from the Association for Adenomyosis and Endometriosis Research and Science. So welcome and thank you, Anna. Please enjoy this video made by endometriosis advocate Marielle Matranga, and the song Chirping Blue Birds, lyrics by Silvia Young, composer Mark Nord, lead vocals by Becky Fleming, piano by Pamela Denon, guitar and backing vocals by Mark Nord.
Chirping bluebirds, entering an unknown, a forever zone, and I can't stop slipping. Chirping bluebirds, sing glorious words, carry my tune, because I know this. Was I here to do more? Did I love you enough to the depth of our souls? Did we connect and hold? Fleeting is fine, but in the back of my mind, when the darkness takes hold, I'm alone and I'm cold. Well, chirping bluebirds, sing glorious words, chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. Chirping bluebirds, sing glorious words, chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. Entering an unknown, a forever zone, chirping bluebirds, and I can't stop slipping. Chirping bluebirds, sing glorious words that carry my tune, because I know this feeling. Chirping bluebirds, sing glorious words, the chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. When the darkness takes hold, I'm alone and I'm cold. Chirping bluebirds, I know this feeling. 'cause I know this. Was I here to do more? Did I love you enough? To the depth of our souls, did we connect and hold? Fleeting is fine, but in the back of my mind, when the darkness takes hold, I'm alone and I'm cold. Well, chirping bluebirds sing glorious words. Chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. Chirping bluebirds sing glorious words. Chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. Entering an unknown, a forever zone. Chirping bluebirds, and I can't stop slipping. Chirping bluebirds sing glorious words that carry my tune, because I know this feeling. Chirping bluebirds sing glorious words. The chirping bluebirds, and I know this feeling. When the darkness takes hold, I'm alone and I'm cold. Chirping bluebirds, I know this feeling. My chirping bluebirds, my forever song, my forever song. Made it home, I made it home, I made it home. My chirping bluebirds, I made it home.
So thank you so much for joining us. And I would also like to thank Dr. Wendy Bingham for donating her Zoom account for this event. A quick little disclaimer. This is also a disclaimer that's found in the book. So assigned female at birth, AFAB, trans and non-binary inclusive. Use of terms related to femme, female, girls, women, or women's health used herein, that is in referential citations, is intended only as a theoretical and historic framework. Such use is not intended to trivialize any and all lived experiences trying to access healthcare in a two-gendered system, and the many intersections facing added discrimination, including but not limited to ethnicity, race, culture, size, religion, gender, sexual orientation, age, disability, and socioeconomic bias. Endometriosis is a disease that faces institutional gaslighting to have society believe it's just a bad period, with the protocol being to control the period, then control the disease. If that doesn't work, to further gaslight the patient as psychosomatic. Within a two-gendered society, it has historically faced widespread misogyny through many warfare tactics. Limited data is only based on AFAB, but to clarify, endometriosis is not a menstrual disease, but a disease that can be triggered by the menstrual cycle. Endometriosis is a progressive disease characterized by chronic pain, heightened by debilitating flares. Each person's experience is unique. Endometriosis has been found on every organ of the body except the uterus. You don't need to have a uterus to have endometriosis. Yet to this day, it is still treated as a uterus disease. The lived experience of thousands worldwide makes this statement in complete defiance of status quo's doctrine held by the medical establishment. However, the onset of a menstrual cycle can be the first recognizable pattern of consistent flares. Regarding the collection of stories, a call for stories was posted on social media over the time span of several years. These were the stories submitted. The regions represented informed the scope of historical context and interviews selected. These contributed stories and interviews represent the views and experiences of the contributor and interviewer and are not endorsed as a protocol of treatment by the author or editors. All readers are encouraged to use this book as validation and a resource for silenced information and personal storytelling, and advised to seek the best care for their individual needs. Now, I would like to introduce you all to perhaps the most prestigious guest that I've had the honor of interviewing on the Invisible Iconic podcast. The interview is not out yet, but it's coming very, very soon. So I would like to welcome Heather.
I thought you were introducing Silvia with that promo. Thank you. I would like to take us through a little introduction, if I may. The first thing I want to say, of course, to everybody, welcome, welcome, welcome. Everyone who has come out tonight, this afternoon, midnight, depending on where you are in the world, to celebrate our Silvia on the launch of her newest book, Good Girl, Bad Period. I want to give an especially warm welcome to the more than 80 contributors who bravely shared their lived experiences with the world to help make this book a success. I want to take a moment to congratulate Silvia, all the contributors on this tremendous achievement. I know that writing a book is no small feat, understatement of the year, and it takes incredible vulnerability and courage to share personal experiences with the world and really put yourselves and your stories out there. So I want to thank you for your bravery. I want to thank you for your honesty, your dedication to the cause of endometriosis and the larger scope of menstrual health related topics. And with that said, it is a truly great honor and privilege for me to introduce my dear friend, Silvia Young, and congratulate her on this momentous occasion. As you may know, Good Girl, Bad Period marks her 5th publication under FemTruth, and in addition to her intersectional works, Silvia Young is a prolific and incredibly talented writer, playwright, social movement leader, organizer, legislative and policy effort trailblazer, of course, founder of FemTruth Youth, her 501c3 nonprofit based in California, and an incredibly dedicated advocate I've had the privilege of knowing for many, many years. Silvia was diagnosed with endometriosis after 25 years of medical gaslighting, and she brings her biracial and multicultural life experiences to her many pioneering endeavors to advance the disease and women's health. And we are lucky to have her. Storytelling in health is a powerful, age-old, multifaceted means of communicating, educating, inspiring, advocating, and building a sense of community. It harnesses the power of personal narratives to promote understanding, empathy, and strides toward better health outcomes. Through the use of narratives, anecdotes, and personal experiences that revolve around various aspects of health, stories really have the power to evoke emotions and create a connection between the teller and the reader. This emotional engagement helps individuals feel understood, validated, connected, and less alone in their struggles. This also leads to increased compassion and support for those facing health challenges like endometriosis. Storytelling breaks down barriers, reduces stigmas, and encourages a more inclusive and supportive community. And it helps us look at one another and say, oh, you too? Good Girl, Bad Period is a collection of such stories, each with the goal of breaking the silence on misogyny and gaslighting through the lens of endometriosis. Along with curricular commentary and narration guided by Silvia, this anthology brings over 80 lived experiences to the forefront of the conversation by providing authentic perspectives from the inside. We are the only owners and experts on our narratives. The counter-narrative weaved throughout its pages by the author also calls attention to many of history's most prominent feminist writers and organizers, whose works attest to the themes the book intends to destigmatize. While we've already established, and most of us already know, that endometriosis isn't a period disease to be sure, and you don't need to menstruate or have a uterus to struggle with endo, menstrual pain can be a large part of the experience for many. And yet menstruation in general for those with and without endometriosis remains so taboo, and the disease is too often referred to as simply killer cramps or just period pain. We need to be able to talk about these things without fear of reprisal or pushback or shame. As we all know, menstruation is a natural biological process that half the world's population experiences. Yet, despite its universality, the topic continues to be wrapped in stigma that leads to silence, misinformation, and diminished care seeking. Good girl, bad period absolutely shreds the patriarchal good girl doctrine and dissects the system that was never built with us in mind in the first place. To everyone here today, I urge you to read this book and share it. Share it with others, because one of the most insidious ways society tries to keep us silent is by trivializing our pain and suffering. The medical community itself often continues to ignore our symptoms, dismissing them as hysteria or emotional or a product of our imagination or our hormones, which is insulting and untrue. Endometriosis and painful periods are real and they are debilitating. The kind of dismissive attitudes we continue to be subjected to are unacceptable, and it contributes to the normalization of our suffering. This book began long ago, I have the privilege of knowing, as a very small anthology with only a few stories and without the narrator's perspective. It grew organically and by design through Silvia's incredible vision over the years. Now crossing 4 continents, 13 countries, 22 states, the stories captured in Good Girl, Bad Period represent not only the estimated 200 million people with endometriosis, but serve as a truly unique contributions to the conversation around endometriosis and menstrual health. Good Girl, Bad Period has not been released a moment too soon. We are now in an era where the period has become political. We are seeing legislation on the table intending to ban education about the menstrual cycle in some schools even before 6th grade, despite the fact that many students will experience their first periods in the 4th or 5th grade, and the CDC reports that the average age of menarche in the US is 11. Such legislation reinforces the topic of menstruation as taboo and continues to enshroud it in silence. Yet we know menstruation can largely be considered the 5th vital sign of health, and that a very high number of students with endometriosis continue to struggle with menstrual pain that causes them to miss school, work, and social functions. Symptoms of endometriosis, including menstrual pain, have long been associated with inferior quality of life and economic strain. Delayed diagnoses, inadequate care, lack of access to quality treatments, and poor support of those struggling with endometriosis continue in large part due to the health disparities and lack of information across the spectrum. Good Girl, Bad Period boldly breaks down this silence and brings the conversations to the forefront, addressing myths, misunderstandings, and stigmas surrounding endometriosis, menstrual health, and much more in a clear and empowering way. Silvia has done an incredible job of using her expertise and personal experience to create a book that is informative, relatable, and searingly honest. The journeys bravely shared within these pages about endometriosis, menstruation, the challenges so many of us have faced and continue to face, and even thankfully some triumphs, interspersed with historical context, are helping to normalize the conversations that need to be heard as we continue to push this disease forward. It reminds us that the shame is not ours to carry. By collating and giving voice to push the disease forward and carry crucial narratives across all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic sectors, Good Girl, Bad Period is meeting people where they are in their journeys and bringing their critical perspectives to the front of the dialogue. The vulnerable moments and truths so courageously shared by others throughout this book from every corner of the world will help save someone's life. As Silvia said in her introduction, we can't afford to stay silent. We don't owe society compliance to invisibility, and I agree. I am confident that this book and the contributors herein will change lives and change the conversation about endometriosis and menstrual health. It is a testament to the power of our community, to the power of storytelling, and to the power of bravely breaking down barriers. So let's celebrate this incredible achievement and the powerful words and truth contributed by so many of you within its pages, and continue our important work of advocating for endometriosis education and empowerment. Good Girl, Bad Period is not just a book. It's a powerful call to action and a manifesto for all bodies affected by the disease to reject the shame society has placed upon us in order to embrace our truths. We must continue to use our voices and tell our stories to demand better education, better healthcare, better access to care, and better understanding of the disease. Our lives depend on it, and these are the stories that simply must be told. Silvia, congratulations and thank you. And to all of you and the contributors who helped bring Good Girl, Bad Period to fruition as a true labor of love and sacrifice through all the setbacks and obstacles, I am proud to be part of your momentous occasion.
Thank you so much, Heather. Hello, and thank you for coming. I'm Silvia, and I'm the author. And I really want to thank Heather. That was beautiful words. I want to thank all the contributors, the interviewees, the editors, all the collaborators, the event hosts, and everyone supporting this book along the way. It's been years in the making, as we've all been waiting anxiously for it to come out, especially those that have been on this ride since the first edition, when it was just Fem Truth and Endometriosis edition, the first book on this series. So thank you for everyone joining today. I really appreciate it. I've been asked what inspired me to kind of take this angle with this book. And as most of you know, I'm not a medical writer, and I don't fancy myself one, and that is not my lane. But the way I see this is way more social, and I relate to myself as a young girl, not having the tools to navigate out of bad situations. And I was just obsessed with biographies and reading other people's stories and learning from them. How did they get out of situations? How did they get from one point to another point? Just so much soul searching. And so when I first put the first edition together, even though the stories were absolutely so compelling, what I wanted to add was way more context to these stories, because otherwise we assume everyone's living our existence, and you can't really have as much compassion as I wanted the reader to have. So when I decided to do the interviews, that was really, really exciting for me to really see what it was like to live in these regions. What is their healthcare like? What is their political system like? So that we don't only learn about accessing healthcare, but all the other intersections that affect our access, and how our voice and what we do and the action we make can make a difference. We can be one of those stories that I, learned about when I would read biographies. We are actually those stories. And this book celebrates all of us that have put these stories out there. Some of these stories come from people that used to be very, very big in the scene and now aren't. And I want to capture their magic, because everything they did made a difference and brought us to where we are today. Just like a lot of the writers that I covered, such as Sylvia Plath or Virginia Woolf or Bell Hooks, it all brings us to where we are today, had we not had those in front of us blazing trails. So where do I want this book to go? Where I want this book to go is curriculum. And I'm really happy to say that we are already making strides in that. And it's already been accepted into several curriculum at the college and university level. What's so exciting about that is if we can capture a student before this disease or any diseases take their health to the level of disability where they can't have as much impact, then maybe if we can get the information to them early, they can be part of the solution. They can be the ones creating these patient-centered solutions that help take us into this next wave of really having care and being heard with solutions for us, by us, much like this book. And that's how I think about this book. But it's for us, by us, and for other people like us, just like I would try and find myself in these biographies and try and find tools to navigate. I hope that our stories are going to give others the tools to navigate as well. That's the goal. So they're not in the dark for as long as we've been in the dark, that we use our stories for action. So I want to thank you again, everyone, for coming. And I really appreciate it. I feel like you're all like family. Thank you again for the support. I can't say enough. So with that, back to Alex.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. And now back to our presentation. So we have a wonderful reading from the beginning of Good Girl, Bad Period. And this is all the way from Ireland. This is Doreen Barrett. So she's put together this video for us.
The good girl mentality is a pervasive belief system that teaches girls and women to prioritise the needs of others over their own. This mentality is reinforced by societal expectations and gender norms that dictate how women should behave, look and think. One of the ways in which the good girl mentality manifests is in the way girls and women are taught to hide their bodies and their bodily functions. Girls are taught to be ashamed of their periods and to hide any evidence of them, whether it be pain, pads, tampons or stained clothing. This shame and secrecy surrounding menstruation is deeply rooted in misogyny and serves to control and oppress women. By teaching girls and women to be ashamed of their bodies and their natural functions, we are perpetuating a system that silences and dismisses their experiences and needs. Being a good girl in a patriarchal society often means conforming to the expectations and norms established by men. These expectations determine the standard of femininity and level of submissiveness socially permitted. In a patriarchal society, women are often expected to be polite, obedient, and subservient to the men in their lives. This can mean refraining from speaking out or expressing their own opinions and desires, putting the needs of men first. Good girls are expected to adhere to strict standards of femininity. This includes dressing and grooming in a certain way, behaving in a demure and ladylike manner, and avoiding anything that is considered too bold or aggressive. These expectations can put a great deal of pressure on girls and women who feel like they have to constantly prove their worth and value in order to be accepted by society. The pressure can take a toll on their mental health and well-being, even lead to feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem. The concept of the good girl is often used to control and manipulate women by setting strict standards of behaviour and then judging women who fail to meet them. Men are able to exert power over women to maintain their dominance in society. Women have historically been marginalised and discriminated against in many societies around the world, leading to poor health and quality of life. In patriarchal societies, women are often not afforded the same rights and opportunities as men, negatively impacting their ability to access education, healthcare, and other essential services. One of the key ways the patriarchy impacts women's health is through gender-based violence. Violence against women is a pervasive problem in many parts of the world. According to the World Health Organization, 1 in 3 women worldwide has experienced physical violence, and this violence has serious consequences for women's physical and mental health. The patriarchy also impacts women's health through unequal healthcare access. In many patriarchal societies, women endure failing health because they are not afforded the same access as men. In some parts of the world, women are less likely to receive medical treatment for serious conditions from a heart attack to endometriosis, leading to higher rates of morbidity and mortality. Women's reproductive health is also negatively impacted by patriarchal societies. In these societies, women's reproductive rights are not well protected, and reproductive health has been made synonymous with women's health. Any woman seeking healthcare, whether it involves the uterus organ or not, is viewed through the lens of reproduction. The patriarchy also has a negative impact on women's mental health. In order to address the negative impact of the patriarchy on women's health and rights, it is important for society to work towards achieving gender equality. This can be done through a range of measures, to include improving access to education and healthcare for women, promoting gender equality in the workplace, and implementing laws and policies that protect women's rights. We can all start today with rejecting harmful gender stereotypes and norms. That ends part 4 of this 4-part reading of Silvia Young's Good Girl, Bad Period, breaking the silence of misogyny and gaslighting through the lens of endometriosis.
So I'd like to introduce Elsie next. Elsie, can you share where you're from, a little about your story that you contributed, and what moved you to start your organization?
Thank you, Alex, and thank you, everyone. Congratulations, Silvia, on this launch. It's been a long time coming. I just ordered my book, so it's on my Kindle right now. And I'm going to make sure that I get a physical copy, hopefully signed. So my name is Elsie Wandera, and I'm all the way from East Africa, Kenya, and it's actually a pleasure to be here again. I can't say that enough. So I'm the founder of the Endometriosis Foundation of Kenya. I started it in 2015 from a place of frustration, just because at the time there was very little understanding about the disease amongst the healthcare practitioners and even in the general public, because I was very frustrated at the time. I was like, why are these doctors consistently telling me that all I have to do is, 1, get pregnant, or secondly, continue just using family planning pills to manage the pain. And I couldn't understand, after much research and reading about it, that there were so many women who were suffering with the condition, but there was just no cure. I still, to date, I still cannot wrap my head around it. And so for me, the reason why I started the foundation was to address the health disparities. In Kenya, where I live, it's very difficult for women to access the treatment and the care for endometriosis without having to pay from their own pockets. There's a lot of the stigma around period pain that really just makes it difficult for women to actually speak up, and even young girls to come up and say, look, I'm suffering with this pain. And like Silvia said, for me, the point is to address it at that age, like to make sure that the young girls have the information and know that period pain is not normal. So for me, it's really just around trying to see how we can collaborate with healthcare specialists to make sure that, look, we are raising awareness about the disease, we're raising awareness about the treatments and the options available. I think for us, if the reading that I've done and the research that I've done for a very long time, the global south is not included in the research, and in the data that is out there. And that also just contributes to the health disparity. And for me, it's just to make sure now going forward that we can participate in research and we can participate in just making sure that we drive equity and inclusion better for women and young girls who are in Kenya and in East Africa. I am also a member of the World Endometriosis Steering Committee, and that was a big step because it just meant that finally someone was seeing the work that we were doing in terms of raising awareness on this side of the Sub-Sahara. And that gives us a platform and an opportunity for us to share the voices. And thank you again, Silvia, for just including me in the book, because I am not the final voice, I'm not the last person, but I'm sure I'm representing millions of other women from this part of the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Elsie. Next, I'd like to introduce Anna and thank her for managing the chat. So Anna, can you share where you're from? And I know you contributed an interview as well. So can you share a little about that?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Anna Stevenson. I currently live in Paris, France. I'm originally from Oregon in the United States, which is on the west coast of the US. Long story how I came to France, but it did help a lot in my endometriosis journey. So I've had endo since puberty. Ended up with my sciatic nerve being directly involved, and I was paralyzed. So that was a shock after 30 years of gaslighting. And that really got me to found my nonprofit, a registered nonprofit here. Most French people do not speak English. This is really important to understand. They do not have access as such to any of the advocacy done in English. And the vast majority of what you can find in France is like 30 years old from an American perspective or a Canadian perspective or even an Australian perspective. Pretty much everything you know in English is not yet known in France. And so I made it my mission to bring evidence-based science and research to French-speaking people. French is spoken in many countries around the world as well, but it's really important to understand as well that all the societies and cultures are very different because France also has a colonialist history. And this has caused many, many issues. That's an understatement. So what I'm trying to do at my level is get more inclusivity, because they also do not know that it is not a menstrual disease. They do not know that it doesn't just affect women. It can affect anyone, even without a uterus. They do not know that. And trying to get a better level of research as well, because even though they don't have the evidence and the access, they are still at a very high level of research and influence in the endometriosis research world. I work with doctors in Paris who do understand these issues. They're extremely rare and they're extremely good, which is, I'm blessed to know them and have found them. And we're working on a program to finally bring endometriosis evidence-based knowledge into the workplace and finally get some semblance of intersectionality into this.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that. Okay, next I would like to welcome Katrina. Katrina, I see that you are in the book and on the back cover. So can you share how your organization plans to use this book?
Okay, hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Katrina Aline, and I am from the country Barbados. I am the president and founder of the Katrina Endometriosis and Women Health Association. Sadly, conversations about menstrual cycles still remain taboo in many cultures, as well as in Barbados. I am strongly of the view that body literacy supports my habitual and frank discussion about women's health, can make it easier for girls and women to normalize these conversations. While most girls have what is considered to be a normal period, unfortunately, there are some who experience harrowing, debilitating pain. Often they are told such excruciating pain is normal, when truth be told, it is not. As a proud Barbadian, I'm honored to be one of the stories in this book. My foundation, Katrina Endometriosis and Women Health Association of Barbados, has partnered with the Ministry of Education and Technical Board to expand the growth of health education in schools across the island. KIWA is committed to bringing good girl, bad period to the nation classrooms, and in the process, aid in fostering a climate where young girls are no longer hesitant to openly have conversations about menstrual health. Personally, I look at this book as an enormous reservoir of information. This, I believe, will benefit our students here in Barbados. Indeed, I am eternally grateful that Silvia had a global reach. I hope that through our alliance, we can generate further interest and discussion with the ultimate goal of taking this movement forward.
Thank you so much for that. Okay, next I'd like to introduce Julia. Julia, you provided 2 interviews. Can you explain which regions you shared your expertise on and what the readers will learn about in your interviews?
Sure. Thank you so much, Alexandra. And again, thank you so much, Sylvia, for the book and for bringing everyone together. And so, like Katrina, I am also from Barbados. My organization is the Barbados Association of Endometriosis and PCOS. And I'm currently in the US. I'm doing my PhD in public health, focusing on social and behavioral health, honing in on issues related to women's health, but particularly the intersection of race and gender. And I'm so happy that some of the others before really highlighted the issues related to gender and racism within the healthcare sector. And so with the interviews I did, one took a very high level overview glance at endometriosis and Black women in the US. For those of you who may not know, even when you think about the foundations of gynecology in the US, it is very racist in nature, where a lot of the tools and methods were more or less practiced on enslaved women who had no bodily autonomy. And if we fast forward throughout the years, that seems to be the growing trend. And so what we found is that Black women and other women of color are more or less not included in a lot of these conversations, particularly within the research area. That is changing now, happily, but it is going to be a really uphill battle because of all of the racial atrocities that had happened, within the US. So that's one of the interviews. And then the other interview is, again, looking at Barbados overview, a brief history of the women in Barbados and endometriosis. Because endometriosis was not seen as a condition that afflicted Black women and other women of color, even when Black women were diagnosed with endometriosis, it still seemed to be more or less taboo that really couldn't be endometriosis. And so the interviews that I've written more or less try to unpack that and why that has happened historically and the problems with that now and ways in which we can address it moving forward. And so with my work as a grad student, as well as a public health professional, I do a lot of research looking at intersections, looking at health inequity, developing interventions to address this, and working with high-level agencies like the UN and internationally, as well as the PAHO, because we really want to raise awareness of endometriosis within communities of color, and particularly within areas like the Caribbean, which typically are not really represented in the work that has been done. And so I'm really excited to have contributed just a little bit to the book. And again, thank you so much, Silvia.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so next we have Brandy. You shared your story, but also I've learned that you participated in every single FemTruth related projects in something called 31 FemTruths. So Brandy, can you share a bit about what advocacy looked like when you came on the scene and how it's evolved since?
I would love to. So when I first started, there was really nothing out there. Nancy's Nook Facebook group was pretty small. It wasn't the size that it is today. There wasn't a single registered charity in Canada. I reached out to Heather Guidon at the Center for Endometriosis Care. I reached out to Nancy Peterson. I basically reached out to the Tom Brady's of endometriosis. They not only responded back to me and treated me like I was a person whose voice mattered. They've mentored me, prepared me for a lot over the years. Silvia is just a real natural, and she has accomplished something that very few have been able to do at any point in endometriosis activism, and that is uniting and getting people to work together that traditionally cannot be in the same room together. When she asked me to be a Canadian ambassador for 31 Femme Truths, absolutely, yes. What can I do? I was started as a founding member of the Endo March for representing Alberta, as one of the leaders that was able to organize media for people around the world. And then I founded the Endo Revolution. I produced the Endo Israel campaign, which translated a lot of information and connected organizations from all over the world in several different languages. And I had a platform being, I was starring on a web series, I was on television, I was co-hosting and going on radio shows, no podcasts. There was really nothing out there. So I was the one that was creating in-person support here for the very first time. And I was showing up and I would set at like 20, 25 spaces and balloons and gift bags, just in hopes that one day somebody would show up. And eventually somebody did show up. And it was such a moving experience to meet somebody else that felt that way that I felt, not having the resources, not having the support, not having a person that really truly understands and is willing to talk about it, because back then it was still very taboo to talk about it. I was also meeting with girls as young as 14 years old that were told to get pregnant, girls as young as 16 years old to get given hysterectomies. So you have these young girls that have been butchered, castrated. It's inhumane. And this is a really competitive industry. One of the first things I learned right away is that there's a huge marketing machine that we see in the community, whether it is doctors that are vying for patients, whether it is organizations competing for funding. It's a very competitive, multi-billion-dollar industry. I wish people really understood how deep in the rabbit hole it goes. I've made mistakes in my advocacy, and I try to be very, very careful of who I align myself. We managed to get the first landmark lightings. We managed to get government. We were the first to get government proclamations in the world. We got the address to the Legislative Assembly tabled, like the draft, done, tabled. We did that years and years and years ago. Silvia, she has a children's book that needs to be in every elementary school in the world, like in every language. I've been asked by quite a few people when she will be able to come and read to the children. And, there's a lot of resistance to educating children on their bodies, because people are afraid that if we tell them that the pain is real or give them that validation, that us crazy, hysterical ladies are just going to burn the world to the ground or something. I don't know what they're afraid of.
Standing up, I think, Brandy. I think they're afraid of all of us becoming educated in our own bodies, educated in the barriers.
Absolutely.
Both within the medical systems, within literature, within the curriculum. So I do applaud the initiative. Thank you so much for your years of hard work. This is the first time we're actually meeting, but I've definitely
Yes, it is.
cite you when you've been one of the main people, the backbone of endometriosis advocacy over the years. So thank you for that. And now back to Heather. You've also shared your story, and many may not realize that you also live with endometriosis and face medical gaslighting. So what's something from your story that readers might be surprised to hear about?
Literally nothing, because we all have the same stories. Mine's no different. I mean, even though, it's more than 30 years old, it's no different, and not worth centering over anybody else's. One of the things I would say is really to sort of piggyback on Brandy. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who would be very, very happy to burn it all down just to be king of the ashes. And, we see that still. I saw it then. I see it now. We see it still. So people have to be very, very careful with whom they align. They have to be very careful who they choose for their healthcare practitioner. They have to be careful about everything with every aspect of their health. And, I said it before, we are the only experts on our own narrative. Unfortunately, I still see people having way too many surgeries, way too many suppressions, way too many treatments that aren't working, just like I did, and then 30 plus years later, we should have made more progress by now. And it's not for lack of trying. We stand on the shoulders of giants, and anything good that's ever happened in endometriosis has been the result of advocates like Silvia, like everyone here. We stand in that gap and we make the difference, vitriolic or not. I just think that we have to remember that we are the ones driving it forward, and not to give up. And Silvia's book encourages us to do that.
Thank you so much for that, Heather. Silvia reached out to me to talk about Australia. She just wanted to know a little bit about what it's actually like to live here, a little bit about the history. So I let her know that I'm actually originally from Romania, and I was able to provide both perspectives. And I'm very grateful to Silvia for including both of those in the book. We are the poster child for endometriosis at the moment with our National Action Plan. We've got an endometriosis guideline, we've got a lot going for us. And recently the government has committed $87 million to go towards awareness, research. And you can hear the 87 million in Australia and think, wow, that's absolutely incredible. And it is. And I do believe that it will help a lot of people. And at the same time, we can be realistic and make room for the fact that a lot of the money that is being spent on the symptom management. And somebody like me, who had, for example, sciatic endometriosis, there are very limited options in the country for what we can do. And in terms of interdisciplinary excision, that is also very hard to come by. And if you can find it, it's inaccessible in various ways. Even though I myself have flown back from Australia to my home country of Romania to have a deep infiltrating endometriosis MRI that its specificity is unmatched in Australia. After that MRI, it showed after 3 laparoscopies, 2 of which were meant to be expert excision with our top surgeons here in Australia, I still have sciatic endometriosis. And over the past year, I was actually an advisor for communications and relations for Dr. Wendy Bigham's Extra Pelvic Not Rare. On her board, I had the opportunity to put together a presentation and direct a presentation for the Endometriosis Summit with EPNR and Dr. Abhishek Mangeshikar. Australian advocates are disillusioned by the standard of care in Australia. Our Change the Guidelines movement began on social media last year. In Romania in 2019, they did also create a petition, and that petition has garnered about 10,000 signatures. And I know there's an association over there called Asociația Eu și Endometrioză, Endometriosis and Me Association, and they're working with the Minister of Health over there to really try and bring the gold standard of endometriosis treatment specifically in the public health sphere and accessible to people that, although they do have access to some interdisciplinary expert excision in Romania, although that is there, it's inaccessible for a lot of people as well. So I truly hope that around the world, excision will become a lot more accessible. And on my Invisible Iconic podcast, the next interview will actually be one with a pain specialist. So we're going to be looking at a lot of this, these buzzwords like central sensitization, which certainly exist. But in Australia, in my personal experience and the experience of many of the sufferers and advocates that I speak to, it's kind of used as, another word for hysteria. That's Australia and Romania, and it blows my mind that I'm in a first world country, that I'm privileged. I speak, multiple languages. I was able to go to university, and I'm seeking care in my home country of Romania, which obviously, if we compare socioeconomically, etc., that shouldn't be happening with $87 million committed. So to close the party, here are some words from people on the street that I had the pleasure of meeting in Australia. So please help us to take these stories to the streets. And thank you so much to Silvia Young for writing this book, for bringing us all together, and also for giving me the opportunity to run this Zoom. So thank you very much. And here we are. This is what the people of the Central Coast have to say.
My name's Alex, and my friend Silvia has written a book. And I want to tell you the title of it, and I'm just wondering what you think the book might be about. So it's called Good Girl, Bad Period. What do you think it might be about?
So I would think a really beautiful human that is now having a really horrible season in life without knowing too much. That's how I would perceive that.
So you think about it like a period of time, a period in your life.
So a really good egg and just in a really bad season in life.
A nice person going through a tough time in their life.
Probably a good girl, but like she has her moments that are like not very good.
Just a girl that's going through a tough time in her life, probably. Yeah, rough period. That's what I think.
Yeah, so they're going through a bad time in their life.
Going through struggles of adulthood.
Maybe someone who is genuinely a good person but going through a bad stage in their life because of challenges, things that life has thrown at her.
Maybe a teenager who's having like a bad period or something.
To me, initially, girls, growing up, doing the right thing, fitting into a certain mould, expectations and what they should be and shouldn't be doing. And if they fall out of that boundary, I suppose bad period would say, what's wrong with her? What is she doing with her life? Why isn't she having children? Why did she have 4 children?
No matter
this
what
sort
we
of
do,
thing.
we get judged.
Get judged. For maybe speaking her mind. Others maybe bring her down, and especially other women sometimes, unfortunately. But I'm actually a very positive person, and I just think women should stand up for other women. And I suppose I'm in my early 50s, and I've come to realise that you're better off looking after yourself.
You've got to do your own thing.
Do your own thing, especially once you turn 50, and even if it means walking away from people that are toxic, and then you're going to end up being happier, definitely in the long run.
It's a pretty provocative title. My first instinct is that it's about girls going through maybe their first period or elongated bad periods or something like that.
So the full title is actually Good Girl, Bad Period, Breaking the Silence on Misogyny and Gaslighting Through the Lens of Endometriosis.
Endometriosis.
Have
Can you tell me about that, please?
Okay.
Have you heard of endometriosis before? You have? Okay, cool. What do you know about it?
It is literally a bad period, I guess.
That can be one of the main. Yeah, that can be one of the main symptoms for people. What have you heard?
Growth in your.
You know about it like a reproductive
reproductive.
disease. Have you heard of endometriosis before?
I don't know enough about it to answer with a confident yes.
I'm thinking maybe like set in like a high school and there's a good girl. She's like going through a rough time, like a bad period of time.
Yeah, I've got that too. Like young girl, like not.
So you all think it's about a period in her life?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. It could be also like what girls go through, like for all like women, It could be about like actual periods. Maybe.
It is actually. No, it's okay. Everybody has given the same answer as you guys, that it's a period in her life. And technically it is. Both answers are true. The full title is Good Girl, Bad Period, Breaking the Silence on Misogyny and Gaslighting Through the Lens of Endometriosis. Have you guys heard of endometriosis?
Yeah.
I've heard of it. Well, you have.
I've heard of it.
One of my friends.
I know that it's. I actually don't know much about it, but I've heard
Isn't it when like this
really
something's
heavy.
on the outside.
Yeah.
Very good. So by
probably like that.
definition, basically endometriosis grows outside of the uterus. So people think it's all to do with periods and the uterus, but it actually goes outside of it.
Yeah, right.
Have you heard of endometriosis?
Yeah, I
before?
certainly have, yeah.
You have?
Yeah.
What have you?
All my sisters got it, so
Your sister's
yeah.
got it,
Yeah.
so do I. But actually, it's been found in men.
Yeah,
It's been
right.
found in 27 cases of men, including a guy in Sydney in 2019 that had it in his prostate.
Oh dear.
Oh, yeah, I know.
But that's not endometriosis, that's
That
prostate
no,
cancer.
no, this is endometriosis growing in the prostate because it's not the uterus. Everybody thinks it's the endometrium. So thank you so much all for joining us. That concludes our wonderful book launch for Silvia Young's Good Girl, Bad Period, Breaking the Silence on Misogyny and Gaslighting Through the Lens of Endometriosis. And I would like to thank Silvia. I would like to thank everybody who has joined us today and every single person who has spoken and shared their truth. Just over to you for some final remarks. Thank you so much, Silvia.
I'm going to jump in here and say thank you to you for being a fabulous MC. I know all the hard work you put into those videos. We appreciate all your work and effort. And I also wanted to thank Dr. Wendy Bingham again. And Silvia, of course, I have to let you close it out. So take us out.
Thank you so much, Heather. And I want to let you know, I appreciate you all so much. And when you do read this book, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to pause a little bit because these stories, these interviews, they get to you. They pull on your heartstrings. But with that, we develop more compassion. We develop better listening skills, better patience, better tolerance for each other and for others. And with that, just thank you. Thank you for making space for me and this book and for this event. So thank you so much, everyone.
So I just want to talk about this book that I received called Good Girl, Bad Period by Silvia Young. And I want to talk about why this book is really important to me because as a young Latina, I feel like when I was in college or in high school, if I would have come across this book in one of my sociology classes or women's studies or gender studies classes, I feel like I really would have had a good insight into understanding what endometriosis was and how it's a social justice issue. And I probably would have maybe even led to early diagnosis for me because I would have been able to talk to my doctor about what endometriosis is. It has a glossary. It talks about women from all over the world and their stories. And I really feel like young Sarah would have felt validated by reading this book.
My name is Amy. I'm from Nevada. I run the Las Vegas Endometriosis and Adenomyosis Support Group here locally in Las Vegas. I'm a college student, a mother of 2 daughters, a endometriosis survivor of almost 27 years, as well as a advocate. I attended the launch party for Good Girl, Bad Period. I was excited for so many reasons. I was excited to see so many regions being represented within the book. It makes me happy to know that I'm able to share everyone's experience within that book and the knowledge that everyone has had that I can share with my daughter so that way they know that they're not alone if they end up with endometriosis, that they will have compassion to help others who do have it, as well as advocate for themselves, for their friends, or anyone else who may have that disease and help them through. I try to lead by example because we have the power to change the system, and my story is within the book. I feel that is very important for me to get my story out there because we need to break the medical cycle of abuse. It needs to end. I want a better life, not only for my daughters, but for future generations. I think it's very important that everyone's aware of this disease and how it impacts not just one person, but it can impact an entire family. Very excited about this book, and I hope it gets in everyone's hands so we can start seeing a change that we need. Thank you.